Traditional materialist science lacks a mechanism to explain how 3 pounds of biological tissue produces a first-person perspective. This explanatory gap is known as the hard problem of consciousness. 3 famous historical cases challenge this materialist model. Phineas Gage experienced a complete personality rewrite after a railroad spike destroyed his frontal lobe. Henry Molaison lived in a permanent present tense, unable to form new memories after a bilateral hippocampal resection. In the Asch conformity experiments, participants denied the evidence of their own eyes to align with a group. Neurology and sociology typically treat these as isolated biological flaws or social quirks, siloed into separate scientific disciplines. The 2025 Virtual Ego Framework, or VEF, inverts the premise by positing that consciousness is the fundamental substrate of reality. Under this model, the universe operates as a conscious supercomputer, and human consciousness functions as a localized software instance. Viewing the mind as a virtual machine running on cosmic hardware reinterprets these historical anomalies. They become predictable manifestations of hardware failures and software crashes within the simulation. The virtual machine performs probabilistic indexing. It selects and renders one specific thread from a multiverse of possibilities, creating the high-resolution subjective experience of a linear timeline. The case of Phineas Gage demonstrates a collapse of this indexing flexibility. The damage to his frontal lobe functioned as a hardware failure that locked his virtual machine into rigid, impulsive behavioral loops. Henry Molaison's missing hippocampus represents a collapse of indexing bandwidth. His system rendered the present moment with high fidelity, but lacked the hardware to save that data to a continuous life story. These cases suggest that physical brain damage limits the biological hardware's capacity to properly index the underlying universal simulation. Software-level crashes are equally catastrophic. In the case of David Reimer, an imposed narrative that contradicted the virtual machine's authentic base programming caused a total systemic collapse. The VEF defines psychological trauma as a Zeno trap. This is a recursive software loop where the ego VM continuously re-renders a painful state in an attempt to make the narrative coherent. These rendering errors extend to the network level through the shared field. The Asch conformity experiments provide the data for this collective resonance. Human virtual machines naturally resonate. The combined processing power of a group can pull an individual's perceptual rendering into alignment with the crowd, physically distorting their subjective reality. This model suggests our reality is fragile, shaped by an internal recursive trauma loops and the external processing power of the shared field. Breaking a Zeno trap requires ego transcendence. By temporarily suspending rigid indexing, the system can reboot and select a more coherent probabilistic threat. This microscale model of the mind integrates directly into macrocosmology. Here, late-time cosmic acceleration is governed by a coherence field, labeled Lambda. The universal matrix core links both scales. The Genesis equation governing the mind's friction provides the Lambda field substrate. Tracking outward along the resonance peaks, expansion is dynamically governed. Excess complexity forces the field out, triggering turbulent decoherence. Because we function as the just-in-time rendering engine of reality, our thoughts and choices contribute to the collective shared field. Choosing to resolve individual narrative loops directly influences the structural stability and coherence of the universe.